Welcome to the WRC podcast. I'm your host, Katrina Marie, and you're in the right place. Here at the Well-Rounded Counselor podcast, what you can expect is to learn, shift your thinking, and gain personal and professional growth. And if you have not yet done so, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another podcast episode. The conversation starts now. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the WRC podcast, your go-to resource for insightful conversations on counseling, therapy, and mental well-being. I'm your host, Katrina Marie, and today I have the pleasure of introducing a truly remarkable guest, Arjumand Rafiq. But before I introduce our illustrious guest, I have a friendly reminder that you can now order my book, The Well-Rounded Counselor, Considerations for International College Counselors, on Amazon. The book is available in ebook format for $2.99. I can leave the link down in the show notes, so while you listen to today's episode, you can also multitask and go shopping for the book. And if you buy the book, you'll also avail my course, Simplifying the College Application Process from A to Z, completely free. All you have to do is show me proof of purchase via LinkedIn, and I will send you the code to my course. The value of the course is $19.99, and you get it for free when you purchase my book. And this offer is available till July 1st. So hurry up and get on it. You get two amazing resources. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our amazing guest today. Introducing Arjumand Rafiq, a truly remarkable guest on the WRC podcast. Arjumand's journey into counseling took a unique path, starting with vocational BTech Business and Finance diploma after her GCSEs. Following this, she worked for a few years before pursuing a law degree. However, Arjumand's adventurous spirit led her to take a gap year in Canada, working at a law firm in Vancouver, and even embracing a role as a sales host at the Whistler and Blackcomb Ski Resort. Arjumand's legal career eventually led her to specialize in media and entertainment law within the BBC, where she merged her love for TV drama and law, forming connections with actors, writers, and agents. A change in family circumstances opened up a new opportunity, and Arjumand took a secondment at the BBC World Service. Here, she underwent extensive retraining, working alongside world-class journalists and handling breaking news from around the world. Adding to Arjumand's diverse skill set, she also became a qualified domestic abuse outreach support worker. This role allowed her to navigate sensitive cases, working closely with social services and specialized domestic abuse police units. Her ability to provide support in victims' native languages and her understanding of cultural influences made a significant impact. She now helps youth as a qualified careers counselor with over 15 years' experience here in Dubai. Join me in welcoming Arjumand as we listen to her extraordinary journey. Trust me, guys, you're not going to be disappointed. You're going to want to listen closely. From her unconventional beginnings to her multifaceted experience in law, media, and supporting survivors of domestic abuse, now to tell her well-respected career counselor story, let's introduce Arjumand Rafiq. Arjumand, thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, Katrina. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be on this podcast.
Thank you. We're excited to have you. And I remember having a conversation with you about maybe a month and a half ago, was it, Arjumand, where we were talking about your story and how you came to Dubai, and you just had me in awe. My jaw was dropped as you were telling me. I was like, you have to be on my podcast. With saying that, tell us a little bit about your upbringing and your journey and before Dubai.
So I suppose in as brief as possible, I was born in Pakistan. I grew up in Pakistan until I was 5 years old and made a major journey to the UK alongside my mum. And that trip actually was just to go and visit my grandparents. There was no plan to stay in the UK, but it turned into a much longer stay in the UK to where I was sort of permanently resident. And obviously I went through the school system in the UK, eventually went to university. After some various sort of trials and tribulations, I found that I'm not an exam person, but I had a dream, and that was to pursue a career in law. That was something that I wanted to do from when I was about sort of 7 or 8 years old, and that stemmed from conversations I'd had with my grandfather, who I was close with. But yeah, it was very much a case of that was my sort of future goal, and sort of followed that through, and again, very much a case of when I was told you can't do something, I was a case of, well, actually, I'm going to give this a go, because what have I got to lose? I'd say that was probably definitely my sort of burning sort of fuel that was going behind me. I was told that as a girl and as an Asian girl in particular, my life was going to be, it's going to be involved with a marriage and things. And that was actually coming from school counselors that we had at the time. And it was a case of, okay, I thought to myself, actually, no, that is not what I want. That isn't what life is just about. Yes, it's part and parcel. At some point in my life, it will be, but not necessarily. That wasn't the end at the age of 16 or 17. And so I made a point of actually going against the careers counsellor's advice, really just pushing myself as much as I could into sort of going forward and going to college, and finding out that actually my learning style was that of somebody who did better in a much more sort of in terms of doing coursework and things like that, and that actually represented better the working world. So I knew that it was just a case of finding the right kind of course, the right kind of environment for me, where I would then thrive. And I had an amazing teacher, an English teacher at college, who really sat down with me and sort of said, let's work this through. Let's figure out how you can go and do your law degree that you want to do. But there's a lot of steps you're going to have to take to fine tune yourself, learn about yourself a little bit more, and then go yourself forward. So that was really sort of the beginning, I would say. There was a number of teachers, I think, at certain points in my life that really left their mark with me. Another lovely teacher was somebody, so because I came to the UK as 5 years old, even though I did speak English, I didn't speak great English that well. And quite a lot of students who were from international students were given extra lessons. And that particular teacher, she used to take us out on something that's very unique to the UK, a narrowboat on the canals. And a lot of our lessons were done outdoors. And so I really got to grasp a lot more about the English culture, English countryside. And that exposure that I had actually made me more curious. It made me want to explore what was around me. And I think definitely it got the adventurous side of me. And in that sense, I think it ensured that I wasn't scared of things. I wanted to give everything a go. And that I would say that would be the sort of the starting of the journey to let's find out a little bit more, and then the desire just to get to know information, to find out more about people, and to listen, to hear about other people's conversation and their life experiences was very much that beginning part of my sort of journey.
I can't even imagine like listening to a counselor telling me that this is what you're going to be because you're a girl, and not only a girl, but an Asian girl. I'm sure it was kind of satisfying as your career progressed as a lawyer. Could you tell us a little bit about that part of your life after you kind of finished university and you went on to work for the BBC a little bit, and the skills you gained there?
I mean, certainly university wasn't easy. There was a number of personal sort of hiccups, shall we say, that I went through, and that did mean that my law degree just took me a little bit longer to complete. But it was a case of actually I knew that I needed to complete it, and come what may. And there was quite a lot that I needed to sort of pursue, but it was also a case of taking it step by step. I was incredibly well supported by my tutor at university, as well as a good set of amazing friends too, still friends to this date. And without them, it wouldn't have been possible actually, because doing something like a law degree is not easy, and especially if you know that you are not comfortable with exams, which is the main format of law degree really. So I definitely chose a path that I knew was going to be full of hurdles. And it was not going to be a straightforward path. I went on, I completed my postgraduate that I needed to do, and then that's when I took a gap year. And I think that gap year, that traveling on my own, and really then gave me a sense of of my own self-worth, but also really made me feel that independence that I needed to feel. I knew I could do things before I had worked for, but that was back home in the UK. It was a comfortable environment. Going to another country, so many miles away, and with nobody nearby that I knew. I think that was what really kind of just got me, sort of interested and fascinated with what I was truly capable of doing. And it's something that, so many years later, I'm still talking about that experience. That one whole year really sort of massively defined me, including the fun experiences that I had. So not just the working for a law firm, but learning how to ski and snowboard. So those challenges, but despite the fact that I'm scared of heights, but I was on a cable car. So we went, I decided to do a tandem jump out of a plane. I'm petrified of heights, but I was tied to somebody. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to give this a go. So I suppose all the way along, what I've been doing is learning about how much I can propel myself forward, how much I can push myself. And nothing has ever been a limit. The only limit that I know is if I put a limit on myself. So I would say that would be the key things that I've always learned as I've been going through that journey. And the skills that I've always come from that, from working in a law firm, from working with clients, to negotiating media and entertainment contracts, has been actually knowing what I'm capable of doing. When you're negotiating, some of the key skills we're taught is to know exactly what you're able to offer, what your minimum offer is, and what your maximum is. Where you're able to go, where are you going to meet somebody halfway? Having that open mind as well is really key, and understanding the other person's body language. And again, that's something that part of my training as a law student was absolutely essential, sort of understanding the silence as well, allowing other people to talk, but actively listening has always been key for any of these areas. And just building on that has been a continuous personal growth as well as professional growth, being part of that. So yeah, I think a lot of the times I've taken with both my hands, I've grasped whatever training I've been offered, whether it was a short course or a with no particular certificates at the end of it, or whether it did involve certificates. I would say that it was a case of let's just make the most of it. So it could be something really, really simple, like how to manage your day. You could be doing a training course on how to manage your day, to where I've done coaching and mentoring courses and actually mentored colleagues and things like that. So it's a case of learning through all of that and actually then kind of going, okay, how can I apply? And one thing I know that I do really well is when I've had training, is I'm very good at actually applying that knowledge and putting it down in practical. Whereas I can pick up theory, but I may not be able to put it down in an exam paper necessarily, but I can certainly put it into practice.
So, wow. Okay. So essentially, here's this girl that comes from Pakistan to the UK at 5 years old, gets brought up in the system in the UK, was told that her life wasn't going to surmount to a whole lot, kind of destined for something. And then that fueled you into pursuing a pathway that was not going to be the easy route, but you weren't going to let that stop you. You knew you were up against challenges, and you had somehow, by the grace of God, you had the right mentor in university and college, and you were able to be curious about the world around you, which also then led you to go halfway around the world to Canada and take a gap year. And then after the gap year, what has happened?
So after the gap year was when I came back and I immersed myself fully into the legal field, working for one of the top law firms, Clifford Chance, in the UK. And then following on from that was when I actually then moved into the BBC, because my specialisation when I was doing my postgraduate was actually media and entertainment law. I was fascinated with copyright law. As you said in the introduction, I love watching TV. I grew up watching far too much TV. But I was fascinated also with the technical side of things that happen in the background. And I think as many of us many of us would have dreamt about being an actor at some point. So I'd always wanted to be on TV, and this was my best, closest connection that I could get to TV, working and being surrounded by, famous personalities, and getting a walk around the studios that I'd seen on TV was just absolutely sort of, you can't beat that kind of experience. But equally to actually then have the opportunity to negotiate on TV programs that I'd grown up that were iconic, worldwide. And to say that I've negotiated on, many people may hopefully know about Doctor Who, for example, is a majorly, science fiction, huge UK program. And for me to say that, I had a hand in some of the later series and programs that were, we were able to then develop back based on the negotiations that I had with the various writers' estates and agents and so on, as well as current soap drama programs and things. So that was what sort of happened next. And then life changes, as we know, and as I started, I sort of settled down, had children, and when I had my eldest, I was still commuting from my hometown into central London, and with a small baby, that just becomes much more difficult. So it was a case of, what shall I do now? Because I still wanted a job that was fascinating, but that could actually accommodate the change in my lifestyle. And it just so happened that a chance meeting at a training session within the BBC, where this colleague told me about the BBC World Service, which was based actually in my hometown. And she said they're currently looking for somebody to work in this particular, which was the multimedia department. And essentially what that role was actually pulling together the world news as it happened onto the BBC World website, and much of that also involved doing editing video pieces, sound bites from around the world. We were often listening to newscasts in other languages, and we were trained. We had to learn how to pick up certain keywords, so we knew when to edit, and as well as put down bylines on the BBC World website, and so on and so forth. So I went back into, funnily enough, I'd wanted at one point to become a journalist. And again, this was as close as I could possibly get without having to do a journalism degree, and be trained by, world-class editors who, I was working there when there were some major world events happening. So some of them obviously not so happy, but for example, the Boxing Day tsunami, obviously the Gulf War, there was various other things happening at various stages. To be part of those events and know exactly where you are, and to know that you've had a hand in making sure that people got to hear firsthand what was going on in those circumstances, and that you were involved in that reporting, is something that I can only dream about. That I was involved in whatever, whether it was good or bad news, whatever kind of news it was, to be part of that. I'd grown up as a bit of a news junkie. My grandfather worked for the newspapers, so newspapers was very much the life of our home sort of thing. And having the broadsheet papers, as we had them in those days, was, we woke up to those newspapers. And as a child, I would sit down at the table and copy my grandfather and open up this huge newspaper, which was bigger than I was. Mm. But I would read it, or I would attempt to read it. So that, to be aware of what was going on in the world for me was essential. And I think that, again, absorbing that information and putting it into my work, putting that into what I was doing, was absolutely key. And it meant that the job that I was doing, actually, then I can make it as best as possible. And again, with colleagues, and I was sort of making the most of that situation.
I love how you take on opportunities. You said, I'm really good at taking an opportunity and train myself and then implement it. And a lot of people don't do that step. They're really good at taking the theoretical information. And throughout your career, you've always been very hands-on, it seems like.
Yes. The one thing, funnily enough, that I don't like doing is admin. It's something that I know that I must do. And funnily enough, bearing in mind that I went to a career with law, which is admin heavy. So I have done jobs that are admin heavy, but I also am aware that if I get that out of the way, the bits that I don't like, I do them quickly, and I get them out of the way so I can get on with the practical day job. And all the jobs that I've done, I've always been lucky to be working with people, and definitely as a careers counsellor, I've worked with a lot of people over the years, and I'd say that was definitely the best part of the job. The admin, with any job that we have, there's always an element that we don't like. That's probably not our favorite, and admin definitely is an area that I don't like it, but I will do it and I'll get on with it, and so that it's done, so that I can then get on with the more interesting side of things.
Absolutely. Sure. There are parts of the job that each of us don't necessarily enjoy, but we know it's kind of comes with the role. Let's kind of change gears for a second here. I want to know a little bit more how you kind of got into I kind of want to know how you got into the domestic abuse outreach role. And That must have come not too long after your time at the BBC?
It was, so I'm just trying to think, yes. So, no, it was a few years after. So I'd already been working within, so I was working for a careers company where I was actually, so when I left the BBC, I went and worked for the careers company. And I actually joined them initially as an employment advisor for young people, because I didn't have experience with young people and I didn't feel confident enough to actually go straight into becoming a careers counsellor. So that was a job that I was doing originally within the careers company. Then what happened was that there was a lot of political changes in the UK and the careers companies were disbanded. And so I needed to find another job. And so I got involved with the domestic abuse outreach, which was actually, it's a subject that is very, very close to my heart. I'm just going to share that I am a survivor. So therefore, it was something that I felt that I knew I could definitely contribute towards. And again, it required retraining. I had to be trained up in how to support my clients in court, and various other environments. We were working with specialised police units and social services. There were a number of incidents where, my life was in danger. So it was not a pretty job by a long half, but it's something that I am so proud that I actually did. And I know that whatever impact I had, however small, made a huge impact to those survivors and their families. Because some of the cases that I was handling were actually quite high-profile cases at times, and how you worked with those victims, including also there's a specialised police advisory board that I was part of, because I had knowledge of how certain ethnic groups sort of work in that particular area, how the cultural side to impact families. So I was part of that advisory board, and that again went on to a higher level. So I knew that what I was doing was actually changing mindsets, I guess, really, and in small steps, because this is an area that you have to be so careful how you present a certain conversation. I know that again within some Asian groups, you couldn't just say, why are you, for instance, a hot topic would be, why are you, making your child marry somebody, or why are you asking them to go into a certain career when you know that they don't want to, and you're emotionally blackmailing them. Why are you doing things? And you have to be so careful how you phrase these things. But also, you have to have a conversation at a much more local level. You have to know how to have those conversations without ruffling too many feathers. But at the same time, it's a topic that you do end up ruffling feathers. And I think that often people did take it from me because I came from that environment. And therefore, I could express it in a way that I knew that they would understand and appreciate, and that I wasn't being disrespectful. So yeah, it was by accident that I went into that field, but I didn't do it for very long. It was a job that I did for about a year, but it was a very intense, intense year where I learned a lot. I certainly learned just how resilient I could be, given that there was a couple of situations where my family was threatened, and so it meant that eventually it was a case of, okay, I need to protect my family and call this a day. And I went back into careers, and that's when I qualified as a careers counsellor. But yeah, it was definitely probably the most life-changing roles that I've done.
Wow, I can't believe that you had so much exposure to a variety of different groups of people, probably different ethnicities, like you said, people that spoke different languages where English wasn't their first language. This kind of gave you the opportunity to work with young people in that capacity, with the careers background, with the law background, now with the domestic abuse background. How did you decide to transition your life from the UK to Dubai, now working as a full-time careers counselor? And how do you counsel your students now with the myriad of information and careers that you've had?
The transition actually was, again, by accident. so the job that I was doing was coming to an end. The contract was coming to an end, so I was naturally job hunting. And I suppose the adventurous side of me had always wanted to see what else I could do. What was more? There was something else out there. So I suppose I was chasing that dream that I couldn't really see. I didn't really have a clear picture about it, but I knew that there was so much more that I could be doing. There was lots of things that were happening in the background in my personal life that I just thought, this can't be it. You know, life surely isn't just about getting up, going to work, paying the bills and coming home. And I suppose, again, the fact that I was looking for some sort of excitement is probably part of it. And literally, the coming to Dubai thing was, I saw not even an ad, just this Facebook request of somebody saying, you know, would you want to work as a careers counsellor in Dubai? And I generally just thought, hey, what have I got to lose? Because actually they're probably going to want somebody younger, somebody fresh out of uni. But, you know, I'll inquire and see what happens. And I kind of sat on that for a couple of days, and then I just went back to it and I thought, no, you know what? I'm going to find out, because I've got nothing to lose. And then literally within 2 months of that initial inquiry, I was in Dubai.
Wow.
So it was so quick that I actually had no time to think. Literally just pack up, you know, my house, make sure I've got 2 teenage kids, and to just make sure they were okay, that they knew what they were doing, and just chat to my family and put, you know, my sort of support network in place. And that's really key, I would say, is making sure that I had the support that I needed, and then just sort of taking it from there. And I think just going from that, I'd worked as a consultant in schools through the careers org, the company that I was working for, but I'd never worked full time in a school, and I certainly hadn't worked in an international school handling international applications to university. There was an awful lot that I had to learn very fast. And as I said earlier on, if there's one thing I can do, I'm very practical. It was a case of, okay, I'm just going to eat, sleep and drink everything I possibly can regarding university applications, international careers counselling. I very quickly learned that getting around to the university networking counselling events was really important, building those connections. And whilst my mind might have been going, this is crazy, but actually, I was just taking every step that I could and asking everybody how many other questions I could possibly think of, and absorbing as much as I possibly could. I would say that experience, that's sort of how you can just step into something, is what carries my conversations with young people that I work with now, because many of them may not have had that exposure. They may have, but you know, they may well have some difficult conversations at home actually, and sometimes they are sort of pushed towards a particular direction, or they just don't know. They've not had that exposure. I've had some fascinating conversations with some of the students, you know, and especially those that want to go into law or journalism or want to go into media. That's something that I can talk forever and a day about, and I really do test their knowledge and their ability as to what do they know. And it's not just about what they might see on TV. It's not NCIS, it's not Suits. So I do love having those conversations. Equally, I do get them to think about taking a gap year, because I know just how important something like that is, and just how much personal growth you can do. And I think, if anything, hopefully the passion with which I talk about those things comes through to those young people, and they can see that. I know certainly when I have conversations with parents as well, they can see that. And it gets them thinking, and I don't mind pushing the boundaries with parents especially, and so I would have those conversations with parents and kind of going, hey, you know what, this is your child's dream that we should be talking about, not yours, respectfully. This is what we should be talking about. So I'd say that those pushing the boundaries over the years, those jumping through a plane when I was scared as hell about, oh my God, what have I just done? And will I survive? To the jumping from the UK to Dubai, I'd say all of that, it just shows that actually, no matter who you are, where you've come from, what age you're at, there's nothing that can stop you from doing whatever you want to do. You don't have to be jumping around countries necessarily, but whatever it is that you want to do, you can. and that no matter what life throws at you, take that and learn from it. That's really, really important. It's really key. Life is not smooth running. And it's not supposed to be smooth running. So therefore, definitely learn from each and every, thing that happens to you, but equally talk about it. That's really, really important. There's been a lot of things that I will openly talk about, and learn from, and again, hear what other people have to say about it as well. That's really important as well.
I love your story so much. Arjumand, I love your story. I love everything about all the skills that you've shared with us, that you've acquired over the years. Your tenure at the BBC and all the various roles that you ever had, and everything that you've gone through up until this point. Can you tell us in your own words what you think a well-rounded counselor looks like? Because I have my definition. This is why I've created this platform, but I kind of want to hear from you because you are a well-rounded counselor. Like, if people are agreeing with me, I'm sure everyone would be smiling, nodding their heads, like, yeah, this woman really has so many skills and she doesn't stop and she keeps going. But I want to hear from you. What do you think a well-rounded counselor looks like?
I think the key thing is that professional curiosity, and having an open mind constantly, being realistic, definitely, because sometimes we do have to give a bit of a harder message, to a young person. So I think some of those are the key sort of starting points. The active listening, and having that open body language, and creating a rapport with a young person. They've got to be able to trust you. They've got to feel that what they say is confidential. You've got to be able to boost their confidence no matter what. Even if you have someone who comes in and they think they know it all, at the end of the day, you've got to boost their confidence, and give them that positivity, and to say, actually, anything is possible. If you need to be realistic, and you might need to say, okay, you know what, your path may not be straight, however, you can get there. And I think it's having that honest, open conversation with somebody and saying, hey, I'm not shutting down your dreams at all, far from it. What I am doing is I'm showing you your options, creating that situation where they can see the bigger picture, definitely. And I think really, as a counsellor, if we can't see the bigger picture, if we can't project that bigger pigger, then it becomes a bit tricky to be able to do that job. As much as we need to show them the minute steps, but we also need to show them the bigger opportunities that they have out there. The constant self-development, the growth, that's an absolute must. And to never shy away from that, really, is it. And funnily enough, a conversation I was having with some people earlier on today is the fact that you can learn from anybody and everybody. Young, old, doesn't matter where they're from, who they are. Every situation is a learning opportunity, and to make the most of that. And I think if as a counsellor you can do that, and you can then share that with those that you're working with, your job is almost half done at that particular point, because life is about learning, and you never stop learning. And it's not about, sometimes the conversations I have with the young person, especially here, they will come in and say, I'm going to do my bachelor's in X, Y, and Z, then I'm going to do a master's, then I'm going to do a PhD. And you're kind of going, hold on, let's just take a breath here. What's your aim? What's your hope? What's your dreams? What are you going to do with all of this? Because it's amazing that you want to study, but what else is there? There's so much more to life. When are you going to have some downtime? When are you going to have some time with family, friends, and highlighting that to them? That's not a short answer. I could probably carry on about what is a well-rounded counsellor, but I would say that's just some of the things that I would expect that a well-rounded counsellor would have.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more. Now, if you ran into that counselor that counseled you back when you were in high school, what what would you hope that they would see and say to you? I don't even have the right words. And if they would have the opportunity to see where you're at now, the lives that you're impacting, the people who are listening to this episode are probably being impacted, the victims that you worked with, the colleagues you had back at the BBC, the people that you met on the gap year, your family, what do you think that they would probably say to you?
I think given, oh yes, I think given the time that initial conversation happened so many years ago, when you could get away with saying certain things, and nobody really said anything. And I would like to hope, first of all, that they've changed that side of themselves anyway. I think hopefully they probably would have done. I'd like to think that they would be going, wow, that is amazing. That you didn't listen to me. And that you didn't just stop at going to secretarial college, and that you did persevere and pursue, and that you've taken great leaps and bounds. So I'd like to think that that's what they would be saying now, and hopefully they themselves as a person have also grown, because obviously once upon a time you might well be able to say certain things, against a certain ethnicity, against females, and what have you. And also mindsets back then were very, very, very different, and I think that was world over. So times thankfully have changed so much. There's still so much more to do, but they have come quite a long way. So I'd like them to acknowledge that maybe whilst it was maybe what they thought was the right advice at the time, but it was what I needed probably to hear, actually, to propel me forward.
Absolutely. And we stumble in onto these people, and they may say something that just puts us on a path that makes us unstoppable. And my God, you have been unstoppable. And I'm so grateful that I've gotten to know you professionally and hear your story firsthand. And now you're getting to share it with my global audience. And I know that they're going to just love this episode. So thank you so much for your time today. If people want to get in touch with you, how can they? Is there a way that they can connect with you?
Definitely they can connect on LinkedIn. So I think I probably can share my profile on there as well. So yeah, there's definitely that way to get in.
Perfect. I can leave Arjumand Rafiq's details in the show notes. Thank you so much, Arjumand, for your time today, sharing your wisdom. I personally learned a few things as well, and I just absolutely love your story. I could listen to you all day, and I know that you condensed it down for our podcast episode quite a bit, but my God, I really just loved it, and it inspired me to keep going and to follow my dreams and passions as well, despite the setbacks or the people, the naysayers. It just motivated me as well, and my hope is that this episode motivates and inspires others who listen. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you ever so much for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Well, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of the WRC podcast. I really hope you enjoyed my interview today with Arjumand, and I'm going to leave all of her details below in the show notes. With that being said, make sure that you tune in for next week's episode, and I'll catch you there. Did you love the episode? I hope you're feeling inspired and no longer feeling alone out there, and you're ready to evolve and become a better person. Make sure that you share this podcast or take a screenshot and post it on your social media. That's how you help spread this podcast organically, and people can find it much easier when you share, or share it with a loved one. I'm your host, Katrina Marie, and make it your mission to be a blessing in someone else's life today.